Tesco has today parted company with its chief executive Philip Clarke, who's been there for 3.5 years. It's replaced him with Dave Lewis, who is the head of the personal care division at Unilever.
I think the most significant thing about this is that Tesco has had to go for an outsider, and this is after years. In fact, it's the first time they've gone for an outsider. Previously, they would grow their own chief executives, and in particular, they would grow people internally who were talented enough to run the company, but also pose sufficient challenge to the status quo.
The parallels between the problems that Tesco is facing today and those that Sainsburys faced 20 years ago are really quite striking. At the time, Sainsbury was also sitting on very fat margins of 5% plus and was refusing to actually bring those margins down, where customers were actually looking for better value and quality that was getting just as good as what Sainsbury's was offering them. Sainsbury had to take those margins down, and it wasn't just about price. In order to win the customer back, it actually had to re-emphasize the reason why anyone would go to Sainsbury, which was the brand values it carried, which were about quality as well as good value.
I have some sympathy for Philip Clarke. I think that he took over at a time when he had a predecessor who was obviously riding high, had a very strong reputation, and had built the company to the size and shape that it held. So tearing all that down would have been extremely difficult. There's a parallel there, I think, with David Moyes at Manchester United taking over from Alex Ferguson and having that great legacy to deal with. But at the same time, he had it in his power, as all chief executives do, to change things.
His critics say that what he hasn't got is the clear strategic vision of his predecessor, Sir Terry Leahy. Now, there are those who say that Phil Clarke inherited not a great legacy, that Tesco was suffering before he took over. There are some signs that that's correct, but he was chief executive for 3.5 years and he did make some mistakes. The first one was not getting out of the US when he first became chief executive. The second was not tackling pricing early enough and dramatically enough. If he'd have taken Tesco's prices down, gone nuclear in the words of some analysts, early on in his tenure, he could have really crippled his rivals. They were all racing to build big stores. He could have really made them suffer. Instead, he didn't do that. His rivals, particularly Sainsburys, became stronger, and he left room for the German discounters, Aldi and Lidl, to thrive.
Innovation really is the key to retailing. It's actually what keeps you constantly evolving your format. It is about price, it is about location, but it's also about entertainment. Customers are fickle. They want to have something new, they want to know they're getting good price, good quality. That's one of the things that discounters too will have to take into account. There is no law that says they will take over the UK, and we're already seeing that with the discounters. We're seeing that some of the discounters are bringing in fine wine ranges, etc. So they too will have to evolve, and that means there's an opportunity for Tesco.
I think that Dave Lewis, the new appointment from Unilever, has a sort of double challenge. He's new to Tesco, people are going to be nervous. He doesn't know the shape of the problem that he's got. The other obvious challenge is that he's picking up the company at a time when people are unhappy with some elements of the way in which Philip Clarke managed it. So he has got to find a way of changing. It may be that being the new guy, being the outsider, gives him just the right amount of impetus to be able to do some of the things that Philip Clarke was reluctant to do because he didn't want to overturn the legacy of his predecessor, Terry Leahy.
He will bring a fresh perspective. He will look at the strategy, at Tesco's pricing, which has been a particular issue for the retailer. He will also be able to reconnect Tesco with its customers. Tesco has lost touch with its customers. It needs to get customers to love it again. And Phil Clarke tried to do this, but it just didn't work. Dave Lewis, who runs personal care brands, who knows about brands, who knows about customers, should, in theory, be better placed to do that. Sir Richard Broadbent, chairman, says that his strategy is not going to change. He is going to stick with the same strategy, but we will have to see whether that is the case, because clearly it needs changing.